And welcome for sisters and brothers. I am so very honored to have Klara Sedlacek today, who has a degree in molecular biology. And you may be asking yourself, what has that got to do with stories of persistence? It absolutely does. Klara now works with mothers of toddlers, probably and beyond, to strengthen connections. But before we get to Klara's work, I wanted to hear her very poignant story of how she came to be the Klara that she is today. So Klara, welcome so much to Persistence U. Thank you for being here and hanging with me as I go through some technical difficulties.
No worries. Thank you so much, Lisbeth, for having me. It's a joy to be on your podcast.
Having you here. And, you know, you and I were talking a minute ago, and just the story. Tell us a little bit about your background and that one particular time that sticks in your memory as an inspiration to help other parents, especially of toddlers, strengthen their connections.
Sure. So there's a lot of disconnection within our family that goes, generations back, and it all dates to the civil war in Greece and on the trauma and being as refugees and 30 years living abroad, not able to come back, losing, friends, family members, just the whole family suffered through it. And my mom, I don't think she ever had a true one-on-one parenting situation because, they lived in poverty, and she went to a week-long boarding nursery school, which just sounds horrifying when you see your child only on Sundays.
Wow. So
Right.
She literally lived away in like a camp?
Yes.
While the war was going on?
She was born after the war, but her brothers were, my grandma just grabbed her brothers and ran with them on her back with two toddlers, and look at me now working with moms of toddlers. I'm pretty sure has, something to do with that as well.
Your grandmother,
right.
And from Greece, right?
From Greece, yeah.
Which part in Greece? Do you know?
Northern Greece.
I love that.
Yeah, and they ran to Bulgaria, then they ran to Hungary, and then they ended up in Czech Republic after 10 years or so. And my mom just shares this story that the whole family would see each other on Sundays, and she shares the story that her two older brothers saved the money they were getting for milk to buy her a dress. And she would tell me that story that her brothers are running with this beautiful princess style white dress to her and giving her the dress. And that was her, favorite story of her family. But other than that, she wasn't really talking about things much. So I think all that lack of connection created that deep, deep disconnection within herself. And she really struggled parenting. And for some reason, schoolwork and grades were a big deal to her. Right. And she would go corporal punishments if there were bad grades.
Like if you made bad grades in school, where were you raised?
I was raised in Czech Republic.
Okay.
Yeah, we settled there. And she divorced, and she was a single mom raising me. But luckily my grandma lived with us still, the Greek grandma. So at least she had a little bit of help there.
Right.
So, she would go pretty wild. And one time I was afraid to go home, and some lady found me crying in front of our house, and she grabbed me and just walked me home. And then she went inside and talked to my mom about who knows what, but I must have been like 8. And I just remember mom's voice going from pretty charged and tense to mellow. And then I heard the coffee maker going, and I was like, wow, they are just talking and making coffee. And my heart was beating through my throat. Like the whole time I was like, my ear was glued, and I was listening for signs of that she's going for, something to hit me with, and nothing happened. And the lady left, and mom just kind of shut herself in the living room, but didn't really retaliate. And that helped from the, fellow sister, as you were, introduced us as brothers and sisters. Like we are all going through the cycle of pain and healing, and we are truly brothers and sisters in that cycle. And the sister just showed up by, having a kind heart and offering that heart to my mom, who, didn't have a chance to have her heart nurtured. And that kind of, I figured, if I can help there a little bit.
I love that, because
Yeah.
it took an act of courage for a total stranger to find a scared child who was crying because you knew your grade wasn't sufficient for your mother.
Right. Yeah.
And it was going to be really difficult paybacks would be very difficult for you.
Yeah.
And for her to gently step in and provide that encouragement and time is just wonderful that she took that time and
Right.
de-escalate.
I don't know. Yeah. I don't know what I would do now. Like I would probably just take the child in and call child services.
Right.
But she was just a gentle soul. So thank you. And I never met her, after that, but you changed my life a little bit, because, it was one less of a disconnection, one less of a rift between my mom and myself. So
I love that. That is really neat. You can also see your mother's heart, that there are parents out there that would have gotten embarrassed and more angry and retaliated against their children, but she clearly wanted to make some right decisions. Your mom.
She just needed support. She just needed that, a respite for a little bit, just to breathe out and realize, okay, this is where I am, and maybe I'm not entering this from the right angle. And I feel like we all carry those disconnections, those triggers with us, and sometimes they steal that moment from us when we can decide, am I entering this at the right angle? Do I really need to do this? And I always, when it comes to mothering and parenting, I'm thinking, when I'm about to do something, I have that chance now to ask myself that quick question: am I doing this to go closer to my daughter, or is this bringing me further from her?
I love that. Good question.
Right. You don't need any scripts, you don't need any courses. You can just ask yourself that, no matter with whom you are having that relationship at the moment. You can just ask yourself, if that person is dear to you and you're doing that, is it drawing you closer or further from that person?
Very good question. I love that. I love that. Now, your degree is so interesting and would seem to be unrelated to the work that you're doing today, but really, research on intergenerational trauma is very clear. And so I suspect that you've done a lot of research on the baggage that children carry from sometimes grandparents and great-grandparents they've never met.
Right.
So if you could talk just a little bit about that, that would be delightful.
I just love reading about, what's happening with our genes, and it all comes to the epigenetics, which is such a hot field right now. It comes to the gene expression, that when you are raised in a point of stress, your different genes express, and then you live with those genes throughout your whole life. And unless you have a chance to change that, which you can now, the genes will kind of predetermine if you're going to have, you might be obese, you might be less resilient to stress, you might have chronic disease, you might just succumb to those typical, heart rate diseases, things like that. So it's really amazing. And it was shown on rats that when they showed the mom, they electrocuted the mom when she smelled acetone, and then the babies were showing the same reaction as the mom, and they never smelled the acetone. Wow. But the mom had it built within her system and passed it to her, offspring. So
poor rats.
Same way, if our parents and grandparents were through stressful times, they didn't have a chance to raise their offspring's children in a balanced environment, and then that just transfers to through generations. And the beauty of it, I think, is that it's all reversible.
Right. As long as we're alive, when willing and able to.
And you have the right tools. Like, it took me a while. Like, I thought that allopathic way is the way, and psychiatry, psychology, and I always gravitated towards that field. And when I went to regular therapy, it was an eye-opener, but nothing was really happening for me, and I just kept crying and re-triggering myself. And I think I got more stress genes expressed at that time than I was able to calm down. And luckily I found emotional freedom technique, the tapping, which actually allows to, in the moment, calm your genes, calm your response, calm your reactions, and then decide from the point of calm or less of agitation. Like I think the most life-changing sentence within tapping is, even though I feel this feeling, I accept myself. And that, for me, from all the modalities, it stops you questioning yourself for having an emotion. It turns you into the acceptance, into understanding that it's totally normal to have them, that you don't have to shame yourself, that you can just accept yourself where you are and start moving from there.
I love it. It gives you that moment too, though. It seems like it gives you a moment with yourself before you react. Yes. Gives you a chance to respond and not react. And I love what you said about the rat study with the acetone. And I once read about children of 9/11 in the United States, when we had the Twin Towers decimated, and women that lived around the area, I don't want to get this wrong, but women who were pregnant who lived around the area, when they survived with their babies, when their stress levels were tested, and later on their born babies' stress levels were tested, they were the same. Like the baby didn't necessarily have to know what was going on, but they were so close to their mother and they still had those same responses. So it is definitely real. But it's also good, like you said, for you, therapy wasn't the answer. But on the other hand, there are therapeutic interventions that are still helpful, like tapping.
Tapping has changed my life, changed my husband's life, our relationship, and it made it possible for me to become a mother. Because when I was shaped and parented in this disconnected, harsh way, I didn't really think I could be a mother. Because first, my mom had this need to raise me as a boy initially. So my childhood programming went completely different way, and I thought of myself as a boy for a long time. So to be pregnant as a boy, that's already impossible. Then the second burden or a second obstacle was, it's really hard I don't think I could be a good mom. I'm a bad person, so I cannot be a good mom. And the third one was that I had a sexual trauma that was stopping me from undergoing any therapies or treatment in the pregnant world, because I just could not go and go under, just be calm and normal and just go for a visit. So we were struggling with me not wanting to be a mom, and then when I wanted to, we were struggling with infertility. And I was like, okay. So I just said to myself, even though I don't want to go anywhere, I hate doing this, I will be a bad mother. I accept myself, and I'm gonna do it. And tapping comes with also connecting to your acupressure point. So through a couple of rounds, I was able to reduce my resistance, I would say. And now we have a child, and it took a lot to have her. It was way more than just a regular IVF. This was like a magic of magics.
Well, that's wonderful. So now you have a little girl, and now you help other parents, moms particularly, it sounds as though.
Yeah.
And when did you start working with other moms?
I started working with other moms 10 years ago. And funny enough, I started with the ADHD field.
Okay.
Because ADHD really responds to stress like kids do to sugar. So if you can reduce the stress in the parenting world and work on promoting the connection and understanding to your child, then you got reduced symptoms already. Okay. And then you become a really calm advocate of your child, and you can go to the schools, and instead of like, there's something wrong with my child, you can just look for, modalities and things to help him thrive, instead of thinking that there's something wrong. And then you can change, make changes at home and things that would really work towards your child.
Okay.
But you just become like this awesome advocate of your child.
I love
So
that.
I started there. And then when I had my toddler, I realized that toddlerhood is like a way for you to restart, like restart your eyes, restart your heart, restart your, because I love this song from Snow Patrol, and one piece of lyrics, it says, "Forget what we are told before we get too old." And that just rings in my head, like, it's so true. And the child shows you every day to parent from here and not parent from there. And if you have the tools to parent from here and nurture yourself in the moment, then you can start writing new stories and your own stories, and not following something that was, told to you or done to you many, many years ago.
I love that. So you can be more in the moment, and your toddler gave you sort of a reboot.
Yeah, well, I follow her every day to daycare, and she just sees joy, simple, without any healing, but she sees joy where I would never look.
Right?
She sees opportunities where I just shut myself down, like, my eyes and heart, both organs are very worn out, like especially my heart. But she's here and she's kind of refreshing the look on the world. It's like, look, mom, you can see this here and this there. And the most refreshing thing is the way she looks at me, because I kept coming from the place that I am broken. There's something wrong with me. I'm not good enough, the typical mom guilt person.
Sure.
But she reflects, like, in her eyes, I see the most beautiful person in the world. Like, every day that she smiles at me, laughs with me, I'm like, oh, she really thinks I'm awesome. That is so cool.
I love that. That is beautiful. And it seems like you've done a lot of work to be able to bring your best to her and the role of being a mother. But what a reward she has given you.
Yes.
What a life.
Every day when I'm, hanging in there by the thin hair of sanity, I'm like, this is a gift. Remember that. This is a gift. This is a magic of magics.
I worked hard for this gift. Yeah. That's right. Oh, Klara, that's wonderful. Yeah. That's so terrific. Well, I'm sure that other moms can really benefit from your authentic approach and, from your wisdom of not just your education, but your years of work in the field. If someone wants to connect with you about your work, where is the best place that they can find you?
It would be my website right now.
Okay.
It's my name. They can find it in the show notes, but let's just try to spell it out.
Spell it out.
Klara with a K.
Yes.
Klara, and my last name, Sedlacek, SEDLACEK.com. And I have a little download there for parents who are struggling with tantrums. So they can either do that or just connect with me, and we can see, where they are. And maybe I can be the nurturing voice that they're looking for.
You can be just like that woman that, walked you home and calmed your mother down and helped de-escalate a really ugly situation.
Mm-hmm. Because even my mom parented from a very ugly place. It was not her fault.
Right.
And when you read that book, it did not start with you. It truly did not start with you. So somehow we all moms come up with this, like, well, we are the worst and it's all our fault and nobody else is to blame but us. But it's not a blame game. It's a game of healing and supporting each other and finding joy in the world instead of, finding guilt.
I love it. That's beautiful. And so the name of that book again is what?
The book, it's called It Did Not Start With You.
Okay.
And it's about, intergenerational trauma. And also, as you talked about the moms of the 9/11.
Yes.
I highly recommend books from Dr. Gabor Mate, who's a physician from Vancouver, where I live as well in Canada. And he worked with the homeless populations and with the impoverished people and with First Nations. And he's just a trauma person. And he talks so much about the transfer of stress from mom to children and how maternal stress, you know, shows up in your life afterwards. And you can listen to him on YouTube or Joe Rogan, like he's everywhere right now, but he just has a really like a very similar story. He was born in Hungary and his mom was stressed by the war and he had to live with someone else when he was an infant. So, you know, all these disconnections right there. And he's able to kind of show on his life how things work. So he's kind of like the guinea pig of trauma and showing everybody how things are. So I would highly recommend his work. It's Mate, M-A-T-E.
And if you could email me maybe a link to a
that.
YouTube, then I could put that on, because this show will be on YouTube as well as the regular podcast channels. And thank you.
Awesome.
That is so incredibly helpful. I'm so inspired by the work that you're doing. And I just love that story. I really do. I love the story of you being walked home. That is a great origin of your story and why you do the work that you do. Great example. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you so much too. It's always a joy again.
It truly has been a joy meeting you.
Thank you.
Okay, hold on one second.